Have you ever noticed how flowers, they smell even stronger at night?
Hmm.
It's like, you'd think they'd save all that energy for the daytime, and when people can actually see them.
Right.
But it's like they're making a statement, pushing back against the darkness with
Yeah.
their beauty and their scent.
Yeah.
It makes you think about all the ways that, we humans try to create meaning,
Hmm.
even when the world feels a little chaotic.
Yeah.
So today, we are going to be diving into the work of a modern philosopher,
Okay.
ZT Tosha.
Okay.
And he actually wrote these notes just today, December 22nd, 2024.
Wow.
So we're getting his thoughts like fresh off the press.
That's great.
And what's so fascinating is that he starts with these like really simple observations about flowers
Okay.
and then just uses them to explore these like really, really deep ideas about existence, knowledge, how we make sense of it all.
That's a really clever approach. I mean, he uses this familiar image of flowers at night
What's
to
it?
draw us in, and
Yeah.
then before you know it, we're like contemplating the meaning of life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's unpack this whole flower metaphor a little bit.
Okay.
What do you think that he's getting at with this idea of flowers kind of pushing back against the darkness?
Well, I think on the surface, it's about resilience.
Uh-huh.
It's highlighting how life persists even in these challenging circumstances.
Yeah.
But then Tosha takes it a step further.
Hmm.
He suggests that just like flowers create this beauty, even though it's fleeting,
Right.
we humans create meaning even though our lives are temporary.
Oh, so he's saying that the fact that things don't last forever doesn't make them less meaningful.
Exactly.
I like that.
Yeah, it's not about permanence, it's about the act of creation itself.
Okay.
And this leads Tosha to this really interesting idea about knowledge.
Okay.
He says it's not simply about accumulating facts,
Right.
but about confronting what he calls the void of our existence.
Okay. That sounds pretty intense. Can you maybe break that down a little bit for
Yeah.
us? What exactly does he mean by the void?
Essentially, he's grappling with this idea that the universe doesn't inherently have a meaning or purpose.
Okay.
We as humans impose meaning onto the world.
Oh, okay.
So our pursuit of knowledge isn't about discovering some pre-existing truth that's out there. It's about wrestling with the fact that we exist in this vast universe that doesn't necessarily care about our existence.
So instead of looking for answers in the universe, we have to create our own.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that creation of meaning for Tosha is where beauty comes in.
Okay.
He makes this bold statement.
Hmm.
Beauty isn't about perfection. It's actually about our struggle to find meaning in a meaningless world.
You know what? Now that he mentions it, that makes a lot of sense. Think about a piece of art that really moves you.
Yeah.
It's often the imperfections, the rawness,
Right.
the evidence of the artist's struggles that make it so powerful.
Exactly. And Tosha would argue that those imperfections reflect our own human struggle
Hmm.
to create meaning in a world that often feels indifferent to our existence.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. But then he kind of throws us a curveball.
Oh,
He starts talking about the limits of language.
Okay.
Like words and art can never truly express everything that we feel or experience. And I think we've all had those moments where we're trying to explain something really important and the
Yeah.
words just fall short.
For sure. Tosha acknowledges that inherent frustration of trying to articulate something deeply personal and just knowing that language can only go so far.
Yeah, it's like trying to explain a dream to someone,
Right.
you know? You can describe the images and the events,
Mm-hmm.
but you can never truly convey the emotions and the sensations that you felt.
And what's so fascinating is that he's using language to point out the limitations of language.
Right.
It's a really
Okay.
clever way to get us to think critically about the tools that we use to communicate.
Totally. Okay, so if language has limits, how do we grapple with these big questions about meaning and existence?
Right.
What is Tosha's take on faith, for example?
Well, for Tosha, faith isn't about blind belief or following dogma.
Okay.
He sees it as the courage to keep searching for meaning, even when we're unsure if it exists.
Hmm.
It's that leap of faith that we take when we choose to believe in something, even when we don't have all the answers.
Kind of like when you decide to go after a big dream, even though you have no guarantee of success.
Exactly.
There's a certain amount of faith involved in just taking that first step.
Exactly. And this idea of faith connects directly to his emphasis on self-honesty.
Okay.
Tosha advocates for this brutal kind of self-examination,
Oh, wow.
the kind that forces us to confront our own limitations and inconsistencies.
Hmm.
He argues that it's only through this process of confronting our own flaws that we can discover our true values.
It's funny, he calls it brutal because it's true. I
Yeah.
remember this time that I had to admit to myself that I wasn't living up to my own ideals.
Yeah.
And it was painful, but ultimately it led to real growth.
And that's exactly what Tosha's getting at. Those moments of discomfort can be catalysts for change.
Yeah.
He suggests that true change, both personal and societal, comes from confronting uncomfortable truths and being willing to challenge our own assumptions.
So it's not just about looking inward, but also about looking outward at the world around us and being willing to question the way things are.
Right. And remember, Tosha started this whole line of thinking with those flowers pushing back against the darkness.
Right.
Now he's challenging us to push back against the darkness of ignorance and complacency in ourselves and in society.
Whoa. That's such a powerful connection. He started with something so simple.
Yeah.
And now he's calling for this major shift in how we think and act in the world.
Right.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and he doesn't stop there. Tosha goes on to argue that morality itself must be rooted in reason.
What does he mean by that? Isn't morality inherently subjective?
Well, Tosha would say that if our moral compass isn't based on logic and reason,
Right.
then it becomes arbitrary and easily manipulated.
I think we're seeing a lot of that in today's world.
Yeah.
People kind of digging in their heels on moral issues
Mhm.
without a really clear rational basis for their argument.
Exactly. Tosha is urging us to examine our own moral beliefs
Mm.
and make sure that they're grounded in something more substantial than just personal preference or blind faith.
Right.
But then he throws us another curveball,
Yeah.
this time about the state of modern society.
Oh, yeah. This is where he gets really unsettling. He says that we are the most informed society in history,
Yeah,
but we're also at risk of collapse because of our unacknowledged ignorance.
it's a paradox, isn't it?
It is. It's like we're drowning in information but starving for wisdom. It's really well, this is definitely giving us a lot to think about. And I can't believe he managed to connect all of these ideas, starting with those simple flowers at night.
Right.
But what's fascinating is that he didn't stop there.
Okay.
He continues on exploring these ideas even further in his notes. Wow.
So let's continue our deep dive into this thought-provoking work.
Sounds good. Yeah, it is a paradox, and it's a really sobering thought, too.
Yeah.
Tosha is suggesting that our own ignorance, even when we're surrounded by information, could lead to our downfall.
So it's not enough to just have information. We have to actively engage with it,
Yeah.
question it, and really try to understand what it means.
Exactly. Tosha advocates for this kind of intellectual humility.
Okay.
He's saying that we should acknowledge that we don't have all the answers
Right.
and be open to different perspectives.
Which brings us back to those flowers.
Yeah.
Tosha started with this really simple observation about them smelling at night
Right.
and somehow managed to connect it to these huge ideas about knowledge, ignorance,
Yeah.
and even the fate of society.
It's remarkable, isn't it? He takes something seemingly ordinary
Right.
and reveals all these profound philosophical questions hidden within it. It's like he's encouraging us to look at the world with fresh eyes.
And question everything that we think we know.
He's pushing us to be more like those flowers, pushing back against the darkness
Yeah.
with our own acts of creation and meaning-making.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
And it speaks to the optimism that I see in Tosha's work, too.
Yeah.
He's not just pointing out the problems.
Right.
He's offering a way forward.
It's inspiring, really. He's not giving us all the answers or anything.
Right.
But he's providing a framework
Yeah.
for how to approach these big questions in a way that feels both intellectually rigorous
Yeah.
and personally relevant.
And that's what makes his work so compelling.
Yeah.
He's not just talking about these abstract concepts.
Right.
He's talking about how those concepts connect to our everyday lives, our struggles, our hopes,
Yeah.
and our fears.
I really appreciate how he weaves his own personal reflections into these philosophical ideas. He's not afraid to be vulnerable and share his own doubts,
Right.
which makes his arguments even more powerful, I think.
Vulnerability is often seen as a weakness, but Tosha shows us that it can actually be a strength.
Okay.
By sharing his own struggles, he invites us to do the same,
Right.
to be honest with ourselves about our own shortcomings.
And he's also not afraid to call out the hypocrisy and contradictions that we see in the world around us.
Absolutely. He challenges us to confront those uncomfortable truths,
Yeah.
to examine our own biases,
Right.
and to be open to changing our minds when presented with new information.
He's not giving us a set of rules to follow, but rather a set of tools for critical thinking and self-discovery.
And that's perhaps the most valuable lesson that we can take away from Tosha's work.
Okay.
This journey of finding meaning
Mm-hmm.
isn't about arriving at some final destination.
Right.
but about this ongoing process of questioning, exploring, and
Oh,
creating.
it's about being comfortable with uncertainty
Yeah.
and accepting that there might not be any, like, easy answers to life's big questions.
But even in that uncertainty, Tosha finds a sense of freedom.
Ah.
He's saying that we have the power to create our own meaning,
Mm-hmm.
to shape our own destinies,
Right.
and to make a difference in the world.
That's a powerful message, especially when the world feels so chaotic and unpredictable,
Yeah.
as it does sometimes.
It reminds us that we're not just these passive observers in this grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
We're active participants
Right.
with the ability to make choices
Mm-hmm.
and to contribute to something larger than ourselves.
And to think, it all started with that simple question. Why do flowers smell at night?
I know, right?
Who knew such an ordinary observation could lead to such profound insights?
That's the power of curiosity, isn't it?
Yeah.
Tosha shows us that even the most mundane things
Yeah.
can spark extraordinary thoughts.
Right.
This pursuit of knowledge is a lifelong adventure filled with unexpected discoveries.
So as we kind of wrap up our deep dive into Tosha's work,
Yeah.
what kind of stands out to you the most? What's resonating with you from his insights?
For me, it's his emphasis on the importance of reason as the foundation for morality.
Okay.
In a world where opinions are so polarized,
Right.
it's more important than ever
Yeah.
to ground our ethical beliefs
Mm-hmm.
in a solid, rational framework.
I think that's a great point. And it connects so well with his call for intellectual humility,
Yeah.
that understanding that we don't have all the answers and that our own biases can cloud our judgment.
Absolutely.
And of course, his idea of faith as a rebellion against the absurdity of life is incredibly powerful.
Oh, yeah.
It's a reminder that even when faced with doubt and uncertainty,
Yeah.
we can choose to keep searching for meaning,
Right.
to keep creating, to
Yeah.
keep striving for something better.
Absolutely. Tosha's work is a call to action.
Yeah.
It's an invitation to engage with the world in a more thoughtful, critical, and compassionate way.
Well said. We've only scratched the surface of Tosha's work here.
Yeah.
But hopefully this deep dive has given you some new thoughts and questions to consider.
I certainly hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, his ideas are meant to provoke us, challenge us, and inspire us to live more examined and meaningful lives.
And the fact that he wrote these notes just today makes it feel even more immediate.
Right.
Like we're right there with him wrestling with these big questions.
It reminds us that philosophy isn't just some dusty academic subject.
Right.
It's a living conversation that's relevant to all of us,
Yeah.
no matter where we are in our own journeys.
And on that note, I think it's time to leave our listeners with something to ponder. If meaning isn't inherent, if it's something that we create, what meaning will you create in the world?
Yeah, it's a really powerful question to think about, isn't it? It kind of shifts our focus from passively searching for meaning
Right.
to actively creating it.
Yeah, he feels like a call to action. Like we're not just here to observe the world,
Yeah.
We're here to make our mark on it, to bring our own unique meaning to the table.
And what's so empowering about Tosha's perspective is that he reminds us that even seemingly small acts of creation, kindness, connection can contribute to this more meaningful existence,
Yeah.
not just for ourselves,
Right.
but for others as well.
It's like we talked about earlier, those flowers pushing back against the darkness.
Yeah.
Maybe we can all be those flowers in our own way, spreading beauty and light,
Yeah.
even when the world feels chaotic.
I love that image. And I think it speaks to the underlying hopefulness in Tosha's work, too.
Yeah.
He acknowledges the dark realities of the human condition,
Right.
but he doesn't let that paralyze him or anything.
Mm-hmm.
He keeps circling back to this idea of human agency,
Yeah.
our power to choose, to create, to make a difference.
And to keep searching, even when those answers feel out of reach.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Tosha reminds us that the search for meaning is a lifelong journey,
Yeah.
and it's the journey itself,
Right.
not the destination, that really matters.
Well, I don't know about you, but I am feeling both challenged and incredibly inspired by Tosha's work. I mean,
Yeah.
his ideas really get under your skin
Yeah.
and stay with you long after you've finished reading.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, his writing is so thought-provoking and insightful
Yeah.
and so deeply human.
Mhm.
I have a feeling we'll be revisiting his ideas for quite some time.
Yeah, so if you're feeling as intrigued by ZT Tosha as we are,
Yeah.
we highly encourage you to check out his work. We've only scratched the surface here today.
Right.
There's a whole world of thought-provoking insights waiting to be discovered.
Yeah. And who knows, maybe Tosha's words will inspire you to create your own unique meaning in the world, to bloom in your own way,
Yeah.
even amidst the darkness.
That's it for our deep dive this week. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep creating the meaning that matters to you.